Hello, I'm Khush Mark, and I'm the principal and founder of the New School of Nutritional Medicine. As I'd mentioned before, this is part two of hormones during menopause, perimenopause, and post. I'm just doing it in any order. It's just coming to my as it's coming to my head. So excuse me there. Already done part one. If you've missed part one, I'd pause this and go and watch part one. It's on now the YouTube channel for the New School of Nutritional Medicine. Go to that YouTube channel and you'll find it. Have a listen to it and then come back to this one. So I want to just move on to part two. Part one mentioned the key take-home message was, do you have a pension plan? Are you looking after your adrenals, your adrenal glands? Because these glands are going to become the backup to your ovaries. Once your ovaries start to retire, the adrenal glands are like, hey, I've got it. I've got your back. Let's go. Or they're saying, I'm done. You've exhausted me. You've done so much over the past 40 years. And you weren't really supposed to do all that much. You should have got help and support and slow down a bit. Now I really need your help, and you really need to support your adrenals. Okay, so if that's the case, support your adrenals, look after them. Now you might think, well, I don't know how to do that. If you type in HPA axis dysfunction, you'll find a plethora of information on the internet. HPA, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal. Okay. Now, we used to call it adrenal burnout or adrenal fatigue, but it's no longer correct. We now call it HPA axis dysfunction because it's not burnt out. If your adrenals burn out, you wouldn't produce cortisol. Okay. You wouldn't produce much of what's going on in the adrenals anymore, and you'd be on cortisone. So that's not the case. This is more about the dysfunction. But I want to go back to this HPA, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals. If you imagine it's like a triangle. You've got the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis, which speaks to the hypothalamus, pituitary, and thyroid axis, and they all speak to the hypothalamus, pituitary, ovarian axis. So the adrenals speak to the thyroid speaks to the ovaries speak to the thyroid and the adrenals speak to the ovaries and thyroid, and back and forward. Okay, so it's like a whole community in this body of yours. Amazing community. Nobody dislikes anybody. Everybody works together. Some of them have to pull their weight at certain times of our life. Others are, then have to work harder at certain other periods of your life. So if you're a woman going through perimenopause and you've been diagnosed with hypothyroid, so underactive thyroid, that could be because your HPA axis, which I'm putting at the top here, doesn't have to be at the top. Your HPA axis is probably struggling to communicate with your HPT axis, okay? So you want to address your HPA axis, not the HPT, the HPA, okay? What's going on with your HPA axis? Now, if you're a woman who's on HRT, okay, you decide to go on HRT, absolutely fine. You decide to go on HRT, and hopefully this is body identical or bioidentical HRT, not synthetic form, because why take synthetic when we've got body identical, bioidentical HRT now, right? Doesn't make sense. But why am I saying that? Is because your body identical is much easier on your body. It's identical to your own hormones. So your body has to work less harder. It recognizes it as self. So if you've got that HPA, HPT, and HPO axis speaking to each other, and you're taking HRT, which is here, okay, your HPO axis, what do you think is happening to these guys here, the adrenals up here and the thyroid here? They think everything's fine down here because you're taking it externally, which is fine. Because if you're adrenally exhausted and you've been running, running on all cylinders for the past 40 years, however many ever years it is, and you really need that support, go for it. Why would you suffer? Why would you do that to yourself? Important thing is, these still need support. They still need support, even if you take HRT. Thyroid still needs support, even if you take HRT, okay? Because they all talk to each other. So that's one important thing. Secondly, if you're on HRT, are you getting tested for your hormones regularly? Do you know whether what you're taking is suitable for your biochemically individual needs? Or are you on HRT and that's it now? Does anybody test you for your hormones? Do you have blood tests done? Do you have urine tests done? So, as a naturopathic physician, as a practitioner of functional medicine and nutrition, I was trying to think, what else do? I do others, but they don't involve testing, because the testing involves in being able to analyze it, interpret it, and then put it together with the client's picture. Okay, because you can have two tests that look exactly the same, but the two women sitting in front of you are experiencing different symptoms. Okay, quite unusual, but that can happen. So we make it that it's specifically unique to the client, to you as an individual. Okay, now when you take HRT, most women don't get tested regularly for their hormones to see, are they high, are they low, what's going on. But if you take thyroxine, you get tested for your TSH, okay, which is another story. Let's not go there today, but you get tested for your TSH. If you take testosterone, you get tested for testosterone, okay? Why do we not get tested for our other sex hormones when we're on HRT? This is a really important question. If you've decided to take HRT, and hopefully body identical or bioidentical, then you want to ask that question. Do you know what your hormones are doing? Do you have enough of them? Do you have too much of them? Do you have just enough that is getting rid of your hot flushes and nothing else? So HRT has been proven to help with bone health and cardiovascular disease. Okay, so it is protective. And therefore, I do not, I'm not one of those practitioners who says I'm anti or pro. It's individual. I am with you, what you choose to do, as long as you make an informed decision. But when I see women coming to clinic and they've done a test, a functional medicine test, which involves urine testing and saliva testing, and you can see that they are not metabolizing their estrogens as they should be in a healthy way, then we have to ask the question, why are women going on HRT without knowing what their HRT is doing in their body as far as how it's being metabolized? Okay, so this is part 2. I don't want to go into any more detail about how that test works, and I'll go through that with part 3. But for now, I just want you to think about HRT has benefits. Okay, whether you're doing HRT or not, are you exercising? Are you doing anything that helps bone health? Are you doing anything that is helping your cardiovascular system? Now, one of the unfortunate things that can happen is as women go through the menopause, they can become more insulin resistant. Okay, I mentioned this in part 1. So if you become insulin resistant, or you become more insulin resistant, you don't become sort of diabetic, but you can become insulin resistant. What are you doing to reduce insulin resistance? Okay, so yes, taking HRT may help some of that insulin resistance, but it doesn't mean it's addressing the root cause of your insulin resistance. Food, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance is absolutely 100% reversible. Okay, so what are you doing to help yourself to make sure you're insulin sensitive, so you do not become more and more insulin resistant? So HRT is only going to work to a certain point. And some women are taking HRT, which is really enough to get rid of their hot flushes so they can just sleep at night and they don't have to change their bed sheets or their pajamas. Fine, that's great. Helps you, gives you sleep. That's really important for your HPA axis. Okay, so I want you to think about that and actually just comment below as to, are you taking HRT? Which type of HRT? Is it synthetic, or is it body identical or bioidentical? Do you know exactly what form you're taking? So is it E2? You know, there's different forms. So the bioidentical can be compounded according to each specific individual. Body identical is more like available on the NHS, and it's still a bit more one size fits all, but it's better than the synthetic. Okay. And it has been proven to help women with bone health and cardiovascular disease. Okay, so I hope this video has been helpful and it's given you some food for thought. And also, I do want to emphasize, as we get older, as we age, the the incidence of women as they age falling over, fracturing their hip, and then actually dying from pneumonia after a fracture, especially of the hip, is very common. Well, very more common than we'd like it to be. So the health of your bones is really important. What are you doing to build bone health? Now, I will do another video on bone health, because bone health is not just about taking calcium, having vitamin D, making sure there's phosphorus and all those supplements, because bone is also a living tissue. It's not kind of this dense, it's dense and flexible. You want it to be dense and flexible, strong and flexible, not dense and brittle. So you can take all the vitamin D in the world, and vitamin D also increases calcium, so you can become dense and brittle. Okay. So the take-home message, hopefully, from this video is, if you're taking HRT, great, working for you, fantastic. But how much you're taking? Is it being tested? And do you also know where it's affecting your HPA, HPO, HPT axis? And if you've been diagnosed with an underactive thyroid whilst you've been in perimenopause, then you want to look at your HPA. Just giving thyroxine does not address the underlying cause. Okay, I'll do a part 3. And part 3 is going to be very much about the metabolism of your hormones. And yeah, but please do comment below and let me know whether this has been helpful. And I'm very curious. I'm actually do genuinely want to know, what are you taking? Are you taking HRT? Which form? And how do you test it? And how do you feel? How do you know that it's helping your bone health? How do you know that it's helping your cardiovascular risk symptoms? Okay. Thanks very much for listening, and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.